Humanity continued its usual measured life. Major political issues were being resolved at the White House, while beyond its walls, ordinary people made plans for tomorrow, unaware of the changes that awaited them. But a single morning changed everything. For unknown reasons, all carriers of the Y chromosome in the city suddenly died. In other words, all male beings, from animals and birds to men, perished. Among them was the President of the United States. The only surviving males were a young, talentless illusionist named Yorick Brown and his pet capuchin monkey, Ampersand. In the event of an emergency, Regina Oliver was supposed to assume the presidency. However, at the time of the catastrophe, she was abroad, and no one had heard from her since. Naturally, the absence of leadership led to dire consequences. Riots erupted in the city as panicked women began to destroy everything around them, unsure how to go on living. Tension rose within the White House as well. The staff realized that in 2 weeks, they would be completely trapped. Coal and clean water supplies would run out, and food wouldn't last long either. Without males, animals could no longer reproduce, and growing enough reserves in such a short time was impossible. The catastrophe, they understood, would soon affect not just the city but the entire world. Senator Jennifer Brown assumed leadership. She was soon approached by Agent Sarah Bergen, a member of the President's Secret Task Force, Unit 355. Sarah reported that she had been sent due to a real threat, though she hadn't received detailed instructions about her new mission. Meanwhile, Yorick remained in his apartment, avoiding the streets to prevent becoming a target for desperate women. However, as his supplies dwindled, he decided to leave a note for his girlfriend and ventured outside to scout the situation. At the same time, Senator Brown sent Sarah on a mission to find her daughter, Hero, who had not made contact since the disaster. But Hero wasn't seeking shelter. Instead, she traveled to a refugee center to help those in need, including the wife of her deceased lover. Afterward, she returned to the hideout where her friends were gathered. At first glance, it seemed some men had survived, but it quickly became clear that these individuals were trans men, those born in female bodies who had transitioned via hormone therapy. Therefore, the mysterious plague had no effect on them. In New York City, evacuation began. Heavy military vehicles patrolled the streets, and Yorick had to hide to avoid detection. Still, he managed to sneak into a local bar to leave another message for his girlfriend. He continued to hope she was alive and believed that upon seeing his autograph, she might return home. Yorick usually managed to stay under the radar, but this time things did not go according to plan. His capuchin monkey escaped, forcing Yorick to chase after him. The restless companion descended into the flooded subway and disappeared into the filthy, corpse-laden waters. Fighting his disgust, Yorick decided to follow, unwilling to lose his only friend. At one point, he thought he saw another living man nearby, but it appeared to be just a vision. When he shone his flashlight around, he saw nothing but dirty water. After climbing out, Yorick snuck into a clothing store to change. However, he failed to stay hidden. The shopkeepers spotted the naked visitor and froze in shock. One woman suggested capturing him and handing him over to the authorities for a reward. But ultimately, they took pity on him, let him go, and gave him a set of clean clothes. The stress nearly drove Yorick insane. While watching old videos on his phone, he recalled the day Ampersand had come into his life. Hearing his friend's voice, the little monkey emerged from his hiding spot, and the duo returned home feeling safe, until Yorick heard the door open. Realizing someone had broken in, he armed himself with a guitar and prepared to defend himself. But before he could act, Sarah overpowered and disarmed him. A few hours later, she delivered Yorick to his mother, Senator Brown. The pilots who had brought Yorick to the White House were locked away. Sarah explained that they needed rest after a long flight, but everyone understood the truth. No one could find out that the new president's son had survived. Otherwise, suspicions of conspiracy could arise, leading to even greater chaos. Yorick was not thrilled about the situation. After some rest, he began exploring the White House, but his curiosity almost caused disaster. In an abandoned office, he was discovered by Mara, the widow of the deceased president. Jennifer and Sarah arrived just in time, making it seem like Mara was hallucinating. Yorick managed to hide, but the threat hanging over the conspirators grew. Sarah insisted the boy had to be taken out of the White House. Jennifer's daughter tried to uncover what her mother had seen that night. Jennifer assured her it was just a hallucination, but Kimberly suspected her mother was lying. Jennifer instructed her aides to find a geneticist who could examine Yorick and determine why he and the capuchin had survived. She wanted to bring specialists to the White House, but Sarah objected. It was too dangerous. They had to get Yorick out of the city. Sarah volunteered to handle the mission quickly. Meanwhile, in Israel, a wounded woman regained consciousness. Upon learning that all men on Earth had died, she declared she must now claim the U.S. presidency. Elsewhere, Nora Brady, a former presidential advisor, wandered with her young daughter Mackenzie. Having lost her husband and sons, and left without means to survive, Nora struggled before ultimately deciding to fight for both their lives. News reached the White House that Regina Oliver was alive. This revelation split the staff. Some remained loyal to Jennifer Brown, while others supported Regina and Kimberly. Faced with rising tension, Jennifer agreed with Sarah. Yoro had to be moved to a safer location. Sarah re-enlisted the same pilots who had transported Yoro before, motivating them with promises of heroism and eternal glory. The only way to get Yoro out was by hiding him in a cart carrying dead bodies. He tried to refuse and suggested other plans, but Sarah remained firm. They couldn't afford risks. Sarah successfully smuggled Yoro out and transferred him to a helicopter she would pilot herself. A second helicopter carrying only female pilots flew ahead as a diversion. However, once both helicopters reached a certain altitude, the escort helicopter lost control and exploded. Yoro was horrified, but Sarah remained calm, knowing it was the price of the pilot's silence. They later landed in a forest to rest. Sarah, unable to stand the smell from the corpse cart, asked Yoro to undress so his clothes could be washed. Meanwhile, Hiro, Yoro's sister, traveled with her friend, a trans man, searching for safety. They stopped at a looted store and encountered a frightened Nora and her daughter. Upon examining Mackenzie's infected leg, Hiro offered first aid so they could keep moving. Back in the forest, Sarah and Yoro's camp was attacked by looters. Sarah tried to reason with them, but Yoro, wearing a mask, scared them away with a stick. Deciding not to linger, they moved on to the nearest town. There, they traded a helicopter generator and grenades for a motorcycle. While Sarah inspected the vehicle, Yoro wandered off, thinking he saw his girlfriend in the crowd. He was caught by female police who tore off his mask and discovered his secret. Sarah intervened, fighting them off and dragging Yoro away. Furious, she stopped the bike to scold him, reminding him how close he had come to ruining their mission. Hiro and her companions found temporary shelter in an abandoned women's facility. Hiro confided in Nora that Mackenzie needed antibiotics, but all the pharmacies had been looted. Nora stepped outside to compose herself but was confronted by a gang of horsewomen who claimed the house. The gang herded everyone into the stables. However, Nora noticed one of the women was wounded and asked Hiro to help. Despite hours of makeshift surgery using only duct tape and gloves, the woman's condition worsened. The gang leader, Roxanne, chose to end her suffering. To Nora's surprise, Roxanne was kind. She let them stay and promised to provide antibiotics. Hiro realized the gang controlled not just medicine but an entire mall filled with supplies. Meanwhile, Sarah and Yoro continued toward Boston to find geneticist Allison Mann. At the city's entrance, they encountered a military checkpoint. Sarah proposed splitting up. She would distract the soldiers while Yoro and Erson snuck around. Inside, rebels captured Yoro but mistook him for a trans man. They let him go, even offering help. Eventually, Yoro and Sarah found Allison's office. Though hesitant at first, Allison understood immediately why they were there when Yoro removed his mask. Allison said she couldn't work at Harvard due to lack of equipment and suggested relocating to a lab in San Francisco. Sarah agreed but sabotaged their radio, lying to Yoro that she'd spoken with his mother and gotten permission. Back at the White House, aide Christine feared she had miscarried, but an ultrasound revealed her pregnancy was progressing, and possibly a boy. Meanwhile, Sarah broke into a stranger's home, only to find a fellow operative sent for the same reason, to eliminate the homeowner. Jennifer learned about the helicopter crash and suspected Sarah had staged it to remove witnesses. Realizing Yoro was now with a dangerous criminal, Jennifer feared what might happen. Regina Oliver returned to the White House, and Kimberly began plotting a coup. Meanwhile, Allison confided in Yoro her doubts about the research. She wasn't sure they could revive the male species. Sarah returned and lied again, claiming they had presidential approval to travel. The trio departed, unaware a military patrol circulated Sarah's photo. While waiting for a safe moment to move, Yoro visited a trans community where he could remove his mask without fear. Sarah was furious but quickly realized the real threat wasn't Yoro. It was her. The patrol arrived and began showing her photo. The trio barely escaped and hid in a church, where Sarah was forced to admit she had no contact with the White House and had been acting on her own. Meanwhile, Hiro, her friend Sam, and Nora, with her daughter Mackenzie, continued living in Roxanne's commune. At first glance, the place seemed like a paradise. There was food, medicine, and safety. But tensions began to rise when Nora attempted to take her daughter away from another radical feminist meeting. Roxanne reacted with fury, reminding them that they were guests and had to follow her rules and obey her word without question. She went further, doing everything in her power to make young Mackenzie hate men and become loyal to their movement. During another such meeting, a battle alarm interrupted the gathering. The women quickly erected barricades and armed themselves to defend their supermarket. However, the threat turned out to be just a small group of desperate women with a little girl. Roxanne went out to meet them but, having grown increasingly militant, refused to accept any outsiders. Not even the child's presence softened her. She turned the refugees away, denying them help. At the same time, Allison discovered a flyer among Sarah's belongings, a wanted notice for the agent. She warned Yoro that Sarah might pose a threat and urged him to flee. But he refused to betray his friend, even though he sensed she was hiding something. That evening, Roxanne called her commune together for a special event. She spoke proudly of Laura, a member of the movement whom she called an Amazon. The ceremony began innocently, but it soon took a strange turn. Laura was sprinkled with dirt and submerged in a bathtub. Upon surfacing, she was greeted with cheers and a new name, Athena. Disturbed by the ritual, Sam left the hall. One of the Amazons followed him, warning him not to challenge Roxanne. But her concern earned her a summons for interrogation. Back at the White House, Jennifer Brown received a report that Sarah had been located and an ambush was being prepared. Fearing her son might also be discovered, she grew anxious. Meanwhile, Allison managed to convince Yoro to flee with her, and they escaped into the forest. The tracking unit attempted to pursue them, but Sarah intervened, neutralizing the soldiers and destroying their radios, cutting off contact with the command center. That night, Nora was awakened by screams. Quietly peeking out, she saw a group of Amazons punishing a girl for having spoken with Sam. The women who once seemed radiant now revealed themselves as ruthless. Nora chose not to intervene, prioritizing her daughter's safety. To survive, she would follow the rules. Sarah eventually found a van, and the group continued their journey to San Francisco. However, the tension among them grew. Sarah's distrust increased, and after a heated argument, she fell asleep at the wheel. The vehicle crashed. Allison climbed from the wreck and found Sarah gone. Soon after, a convoy of military vehicles arrived, but they weren't from the White House. Jennifer was informed of the incident and that a man had been among the fugitives. As she scrambled to deflect suspicion away from her son, Yoro woke up in an unfamiliar house, lying beside a woman he didn't recognize. He searched for his capuchin monkey but instead encountered locals who had brought him to the ranch. Though they seemed peaceful, they refused to tell him where his friends were. Meanwhile, the girls had woken up in a jail cell, unaware of their location or how to escape. Jennifer addressed the public, calling for calm and cooperation with evacuation efforts. Amid the crowd, she spotted Beth, her son's girlfriend, who had been recovering in a hospital. While Jennifer spoke to her, Kimberly secretly encouraged Regina to overthrow the current leadership and claim power. Yoro was not freed. On the contrary, he was thrown into a cell with the others, where the community would decide their fate. Soon after, grim news arrived. A new strain of flu had been discovered in Greece. Jennifer shifted her attention to the crisis, only to face another confrontation when Mara appeared, demanding the truth about the rumors concerning Yoro. Tensions flared inside the cell. Yoro and Sarah argued, but the fight ended abruptly when a woman entered, announcing the group would be allowed to stay until Sarah recovered. Then they would be escorted out to continue their journey. The villagers gave Sam a separate room. Before sleeping, he warned Yoro to stay alert and trust no one. But Yoro believed Sam was overreacting. The ranch seemed peaceful and well-resourced, a rare luxury. Elsewhere, Mara, unable to cope with her grief, climbed to the rooftop and stepped into the void, hoping to reunite with her lost family. She left behind a note, urging her daughter to be strong. Beth returned to the city but didn't rejoin her friends. Instead, she headed for a rebel truck to join a group planning an assault on the White House. Back in the commune, Kate, an Amazon, tried to escape, but Roxanne shot her in the back. She covered up the murder, blaming nomads. To deter more desertions, Roxanne imposed mandatory weapons training and planned to expel the remaining guests. Nora, upon hearing this, begged Roxanne to let her and Mackenzie stay. But Roxanne refused, giving her just a few days to leave. She remembered how she had built the commune and how she alone had ruled it since the beginning. Roxanne continued reinforcing her control through fear, forcing residents to relive men's cruelties and view her as their only salvation. Sam, now banned from meetings, began planning to move into the guest houses by the lake and start his own settlement. But Hero had started to fall under Roxanne's influence. When she argued with Sam, Roxanne manipulated her further, suggesting that even a not real man shouldn't speak to her that way. The friends parted, and that night Roxanne drove Sam out with a small supply of food. The next day, she comforted Hero, pretending Sam had left on his own and even organized a festival to say goodbye to all things male. Nora, never able to integrate, took her revenge by setting fire to the shopping mall. The Amazons survived, but their supplies were lost. Nora hid her satisfaction and blended into the grieving crowd. Later, while checking her supplies, she found a police car filled with corpses by the river. Realizing Roxanne's dark secrets, she confronted the leader, promising silence in exchange for food, protection, and a higher status. Nora also offered to help Roxanne maintain control despite the setback. Roxanne accepted, delivering a fiery speech to rally her followers once more. Meanwhile, Sarah began recovering and resumed training, though hallucinations still haunted her. One of the villagers approached her with questions about a device found in the wrecked van, a beacon. Sarah refused to explain what it was and tried to keep it secret from Yoro. Under Roxanne's orders, Hiro found another settlement, a town where women honored the memory of men. But instead of respecting them, Roxanne led a brutal raid. Nora, witnessing the senseless destruction, tried to reason with Roxanne, who insisted this was the path forward. Back in the capital, Regina recovered and prepared to launch a coup against Jennifer Brown. Kimberly, grieving her mother, no longer wanted to participate. Meanwhile, Beth's rebel group planted explosives beneath the government building. Jennifer was summoned and accused of hiding the truth about Yoro. To protect her aide Kristen, Jennifer confessed. She admitted her son had survived and been sent to a geneticist to help save humanity. Her allies turned against her. Before they could act, an explosion rocked the building. Beth's rebels stormed the place, taking hostages. Jennifer recognized Beth in disguise but stayed silent. Regina, overwhelmed by fear, backed down. Jennifer had to take command and negotiate with the rebels. As they tried to evacuate, Regina erupted, accusing everyone of betrayal and exposing Kimberly. In her final act, she revealed that Jennifer's son was alive. A rebel silenced her with a bullet, but the damage was done. At the ranch, the women began hunting Yoro, desperate for male attention. While Allison socialized, Sarah slipped into the forest and destroyed the beacon that had betrayed their location. Chaos consumed the capital. A rival faction unleashed tear gas in the tunnels, followed by gunfire. In the confusion, Beth freed Jennifer and led her to safety. Kristen, left behind, was defended by Kimberly. Through the underground parking lot, the girls managed to find an exit. At the memory town, among scattered personal belongings, Roxanne discovered a notebook listing the names of all surviving men. A new obsession took root in her mind. She now aimed to hunt down and exterminate every last one of them, convinced it was the only way to free the planet. The Amazons decided to start with the young man they had previously encountered, the one believed to be living in a nearby village. Nora showed Roxanne his portrait. It was Yorick Brown. Meanwhile, Beth handed Jennifer her uniform. Before they parted ways, Jennifer confided in the girl that Regina had been right. Yorick was indeed alive. With renewed determination, Roxanne and Nora set out to locate the village where they believed the lone male survivor was hiding. Sensing danger approaching, Sarah urged her companions to prepare for immediate departure. Though the news displeased Yorick, he did not argue. He understood Sarah's urgency. But their time was running out. Roxanne had already identified the estate and was preparing her squad for an imminent attack. During a strategy meeting in Roxanne's camp, two nomads barged in, bringing news that shocked Yorick. They reported the death of the president. Unaware that the presidency had not belonged to her mother, Yorick believed Jennifer had died. In truth, Jennifer was still alive. Grieving what she assumed was the loss of her daughter, she began preparing to flee the city with Beth. With a hunt already underway for her, staying behind was no longer an option. That night, Sam snuck into Jennifer's house. Jennifer immediately recognized her daughter's friend. Together they attempted to escape, but the house was already surrounded. Elsewhere, Kristen and Kimberly had taken refuge in an abandoned barn. Early the next morning, Kimberly woke her friend, declaring that she knew how they could all be saved. They needed Yorick. He was the key to continuing the human race. And it seemed Yorick agreed. That same night, he lay with one of the village women who had long desired him. Their fragile sense of hope, however, was shattered when Roxanne and her squad stormed into the village streets, demanding that the man be surrendered. Sarah awoke to the sound of gunfire. Acting swiftly, she ordered Yorick's new lover to take him and flee while she stayed behind to defend the house. Realizing the overwhelming odds, Sarah walked outside with her hands raised, pretending to be terrified. She presented the village's local transman, passing him off as the real male survivor. A fierce firefight broke out on the main street. The gunshots distracted the attackers just long enough for Sarah to strike back, disarm her enemies, and escape. Even young Mackenzie joined the fray, desperate to prove herself to Roxanne and earn her place within the commune. Meanwhile, Hiro caught up with the group of escapees and opened fire. But as soon as Yorick turned around, she froze, recognizing her brother. Yorick's girlfriend, unaware of their familial connection, instinctively shot Hiro. Despite her injury, Hiro managed to warn Yorick of their mother's death, and revealed that the Amazons intended to destroy him. To buy him time, she took down one of her own comrades before collapsing. Back in the city, the firefight continued until Nora stepped forward with her hands raised, announcing their surrender. Roxanne flew into a rage, but no one listened anymore. Hiro informed Nora that Yorick was alive. The news reignited a spark of hope in the women. Upon returning to their camp, Nora decided it was time to remove Roxanne and open everyone's eyes to the truth. But Roxanne refused to yield. She continued provoking Nora until, pushed to the edge, Nora shot her in the chest. The Amazons raised their weapons in shock, but Nora calmed them with steady, comforting words. Heroes stepped forward to stand at Nora's side. From that moment on, a new leader was born. Meanwhile, Sarah traveled several kilometers through rough terrain before finally finding Yoro and Allison. Yoro was shattered, convinced he had lost everyone he cared about, and that life held no more meaning. Listening to him, Sarah opened up, admitting she understood better than he thought. She too had lost her parents as a child. Sarah then told Yoro that he was free to leave. Their arrangement had been based on Jennifer's orders, and with Jennifer presumed dead, the deal was void. But Yoro refused. He asked Sarah to train him so he could stop being a burden and learn to defend himself. At the same time, Jennifer, Beth, and Sam found themselves locked in a barren room under constant surveillance. Unbeknownst to them, they had been captured by Sarah's former superior from the Secret Service. Following the signal from a hidden beacon, Sarah eventually led her group to a fueled vehicle. Inside, they found gasoline, scientific equipment, and a map with a marked route. Where it led, no one could yet say. For now, that destination remained a mystery.